Welcome to Point of Darkness. Tonight's story is about an exploration of an abandoned morgue beneath an old military hospital, a place where wounded soldiers once passed through endless hallways that now remain silent and empty. Deep below the building, forgotten underground corridors and rusted storage rooms still carry the heavy atmosphere of the past. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and prepare to descend into fear, isolation, and darkness. Enjoy watching. I arrived at the abandoned military hospital sometime after sunset. The place stood far outside the city near an old forest road that hadn't been maintained in years. During the war, the hospital had treated wounded soldiers returning from combat zones. Decades later, most of the complex had already collapsed or been demolished, except for one section, the morgue. Locals avoided talking about it. Even online, there was almost no information left about the building except for a few grainy photographs and stories from explorers who claimed the place felt wrong the moment you stepped inside. Not haunted, just wrong. The road leading there was cracked and covered with weeds. Fog drifted through the trees as I drove deeper into the area. The farther I went, the quieter everything became. No cars, no lights, no sound except the wind outside. When I finally saw the hospital through the trees, I slowed down immediately. The main complex looked enormous even in ruins. Collapsed walls, broken windows, dark empty corridors exposed through damaged concrete. But near the back of the property stood a smaller separate building connected to the hospital by an old underground passage. The morgue. Its windows were completely black. I parked near the entrance gate and grabbed my flashlight. The air outside felt freezing. Not normal cold. The kind of cold that settles into your chest. The front gate had partially collapsed, making it easy to step through. Dead leaves covered the pavement leading toward the entrance. Rusted military vehicles sat abandoned near the loading area behind the hospital. The deeper I walked into the property, the heavier the atmosphere became. Military hospitals already carry a different feeling from normal hospitals. You know pain happened there. Real pain. Thousands of injured people passing through the same halls. And somehow the silence around the morgue felt heavier than the rest of the complex. The entrance door stood slightly open. I switched on my flashlight and stepped inside. The smell hit immediately. Mold, wet concrete, rust, and something faint beneath it all that reminded me of old chemicals and decaying paper. The lobby was small compared to the main hospital. Most of the ceiling panels had fallen onto the floor. Old stretchers leaned against the walls beside faded military signs, pointing toward different sections of the building. Autopsy, storage, lower level. My footsteps echoed sharply through the silence. Every sound seemed unnaturally loud inside the morgue. I slowly moved deeper into the corridor. The walls were lined with peeling paint stained by years of moisture. Old fluorescent lights still hung overhead, dead and flickering slightly whenever wind moved somewhere inside the structure. Then I noticed something strange. The temperature inside kept dropping the farther I walked. Cold air drifted through the halls even though most of the windows were sealed shut. I eventually reached the examination rooms. Large metal tables stood in the center of each room beneath rusted surgical lamps. Cabinets filled with broken glass containers lined the walls. Medical tools still remained scattered across counters beneath thick layers of dust. One room still had old documents spread across a desk. Most were damaged beyond reading, but one sentence was still visible on a stained report, transferred below immediately. I don't know why, but reading that sentence made me uncomfortable instantly. The deeper I explored, the more the building felt emotionally heavy. Not scary in a normal way. It felt oppressive, like the walls themselves carried years of death inside them. At the end of the hallway, I found the elevator. The doors stood partially open, revealing only darkness inside the shaft. A sign beside it pointed toward the underground storage level. I stared into the darkness for several seconds before deciding to take the stairs instead. The staircase leading underground was narrow and concrete. My flashlight barely reached the bottom. The moment I started descending, the atmosphere changed completely. The air became colder, still, silent. By the time I reached the lower level, it felt like the entire world above me had disappeared. The basement corridors were lined with thick metal doors. Most stood partially open. Others remained shut completely. Cold air moved slowly through the darkness. Somewhere far away, water dripped steadily through pipes. I walked carefully through the underground hallway until I found the storage rooms. That was where the fear truly started. Rows of old refrigerated compartments lined the walls. Most doors hung open and empty. Others remained sealed shut. Dust covered almost everything except the floor near several compartments. There were marks in the dust. Fresh marks, like something heavy had recently been dragged across the ground. I immediately stopped moving. For the first time since entering the morgue, I genuinely considered leaving, not because I believed in ghosts, because the basement suddenly no longer felt abandoned. I slowly moved farther into the room. That was when I heard it. A metallic sound somewhere deeper underground. Clang. Very soft, like metal lightly hitting metal. I froze instantly. Silence followed. Then another sound. A slow scraping noise. Somewhere far down the corridor behind me. I turned around immediately and pointed the flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. Only endless concrete walls disappearing into blackness. I tried convincing myself it was old pipes shifting or water moving somewhere beneath the building, but my body no longer believed those explanations. The silence down there felt occupied, like something was standing just outside the flashlight beam watching every movement I made. I started walking back toward the staircase, slowly at first, then faster. As I moved through the basement corridor, one of the metal storage doors suddenly creaked. Very slowly, I stopped again. The door beside me moved only a few inches before stopping completely. No wind touched the hallway. Everything else remained perfectly still. At that point, fear stopped feeling psychological. It became instinctive, the kind of fear that makes your entire body tell you to leave immediately. I continued toward the stairs much faster. Then somewhere behind me, I heard footsteps, slow, heavy, metal echoing softly against concrete. One step, pause, another. I turned around instantly. Nothing. But the footsteps had sounded real. Too real. My flashlight shook slightly in my hand now. Every dark doorway suddenly looked occupied. Every shadow felt alive. I reached the staircase and hurried upward. Halfway to the upper floor, I heard another sound below me. A wheeled stretcher moving across concrete, slowly. The metallic wheels echoed through the stairwell beneath me. I stopped breathing for a second. The sound continued for several moments, then suddenly stopped. Complete silence returned. I didn't wait any longer. I rushed back upstairs into the main level of the morgue. Outside the windows, the night had become completely black. The building looked different in darkness. Worse, the corridors no longer felt abandoned. They felt awake. As I hurried toward the exit, my flashlight briefly illuminated one of the examination rooms again, and for a split second, I thought someone was standing beside the metal table, tall, motionless. I immediately turned the flashlight back. Nothing. The room was empty. But that single moment sent a freezing wave through my entire body. I finally reached the lobby and headed toward the entrance doors. Then I heard it one last time behind me. The sound of metal wheels slowly rolling across the floor somewhere deeper inside the building. Not fast, not chasing me, just moving. I stepped outside immediately into the freezing night air. For the first time in over an hour, I could breathe normally again. Fog drifted across the abandoned hospital grounds, while wind moved through the broken buildings around me. I walked quickly back toward my car, but before getting inside, I looked back one final time. The morgue stood completely silent beneath the darkness. Black windows, concrete walls, underground halls hidden somewhere below it. And for a moment, I had the overwhelming feeling that the building itself had been watching me the entire time. Not a ghost, not a monster, something colder than that. The memory of death itself lingering inside those walls. Even now, months later, I still think about that underground level sometimes. The storage doors, the footsteps, the sound of the stretcher moving through darkness below me. I still explore abandoned places, hospitals, factories, schools, but I never return to the military morgue. And honestly, I don't think I ever will, because some places absorb so much fear and suffering that even after decades of silence, they still feel alive in the dark.
Friends, thank you for watching to the end. If you don't mind, please support me with a like and a subscription. I'll see this and will make more and better videos. Thank you for your attention.